Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with the president of KC Jazz Alive and Buttonwood Financial, Mr. Jon McGraw, on the 8th annual Spotlight Charlie Parker Festivities taking place in Kansas City. He opened up about the citywide celebration of Bird's life and music in August 2021. KC Alive, the University of Missouri, Kansas City, the American Jazz Museum, and other cultural and civic organizations will host jam sessions, tours, lectures, exhibits, panel discussions, poetry slams, workshops, and concerts celebrating the life of Kansas City's native son, Charlie Parker. It's Bird's 101st birthday celebration, and all of the details can be found at spotlightcharlieparker.org. But Jon gets candid about the joyous time that puts KC on the international map. Enjoy.
Jon McGraw.
How you doing, man?
What's up, man?
Another year. We made it.
Oh, man, I tell you what.
We survived 2020, and I think actually had a great 100th birthday for Bird. Now we're on to 2021.
Yeah, I think about that quite often. I look around at everybody, and I almost feel like we survived some weird Twilight Zone zombie movie, and I'm like, man, we're all still here.
That's it. So. Get a few more zombies, right?
Yeah, right.
It's all over.
I mean, because sequels work really well in Hollywood, so why not? Let's do it. But hey, Jon, it's great to talk with you. It's great to see that Charlie Parker is getting celebrated again. I guess that's kind of the elephant in the room, and the texture by which we can go off of this is that, we did survive the 100. We're in 101, and it almost seems as though as the world's waking up, there's probably a special glow to this year's celebration. Do you feel like that's happening?
Absolutely. Yeah. No, last year was a little interesting. I mean, we started out with a bunch of events, and then all of a sudden it dwindled down to like, okay, are we even going to do this? And then literally Kansas City came right to the plate, and by the time we had launched Spotlight Charlie Parker last year, I think we had about 20 events, and some of them were virtual, and some of them, were distanced and outdoors and things like that. But this year has been kind of the opposite. It started early with things ramping up, and it just keeps ramping and ramping and ramping, and now we're at, 35 events, something like that, and we have several more that are continuing to be added to the calendar. So, yeah, people are ready. Get out and do it.
Talk to me about any special guests that are going to be coming into town that should be on people's radars?
Not really, but there is a huge focus on Kansas City jazz musicians and people that are instrumental in the jazz world here in Kansas City. For people that don't know, traditionally this is our 8th year, so I guess I can say traditionally. Spotlight Charlie Parker is the focus on both performance and educational events all across Kansas City, the whole metro area. This year, again, we're celebrating the 101st birthday of Charlie Parker, also known as Bird. We've got the full schedule online, spotlightcharlieparker.org, spotlightcharlieparker.org. The schedule of events, like jazz, continues to evolve, so check in and get all the latest.
Well, I know they're going to do an exhibit down at the American Jazz Museum again. There's going to be a big gala towards the end. Kind of talk to me about some of the Pinnacle events that might be really big on people's radars that would be enticing for them to go to this year.
Right, yeah. So we have 2 tracks. There's going to be the venue showcase track and an educational track. The venue showcase is designed to show off all the great jazz clubs that we've got here in Kansas City. Blue Room, Phoenix, Chaz, Black Dolphin, Green Lady, Lonnie's Reno Club, things that started in 2020, Majestic, and many more. Over on the educational side, there's actually a couple of things that are going to be really fun. We're going to, in tradition, kick off an event at the Nelson Atkins Museum on August 17th. So these are things that you want to start adding to the calendar, titled Bird 101, The Art of Charlie Parker in Kansas City. And it'll be an evening event, so around 5:30, we're actually going to screen the Kansas City PBS documentary. The title of that is Bird, Not Out of Nowhere, and this was a documentary that was done by Kansas City PBS last year. It was released last year for members of PBS and whatnot. You could actually stream it online. we're going to take it down to the Nelson, which, if people aren't aware, had combined with the Tivoli from Westport. When Tivoli ended up closing, they combined into the Nelson. So it's the Tivoli at the Nelson. It'll actually be at the Nelson. We'll see the film, and then the film really features Lonnie McFadden, Bobby Watson. The film producer, Brad Austin, will join actually Lonnie and Bobby at the Nelson for a discussion after the film. And Chuck Haddock, who many people know, wrote the book on Bird and is at UMKC, does Fish Fry radio show and whatnot. He's going to be the moderator. Again, so August 17th in the evening down at the Nelson. Watch the film. It's about an hour long, Bird, not out of nowhere. And then literally Chuck will have a great discussion with Lonnie, Bobby, and Brad to kick off really kind of the educational side of the events.
You know, it's interesting. I recently did an interview with a couple of musicians from Poland that did an album based on a short story that basically theorized if Charlie Parker would have continued to live when Bossa Nova got big in like the early 60s, what would it sound like if he did make an album? Well, this author actually wrote a story when he was in college that said that Charlie Parker did that. They took it to fact. And he wrote a story as a follow-up, and basically two of these musicians in Poland have made an album called Charlie Parker Does Bossa Nova, and then there's a little thing that says, what if? You should go out and listen to it. It's on Apple Music, all the platforms. It's totally interesting. And what I'm thinking is, when I was interviewing these guys, I was thinking, man, what an unbelievable reach. The author was from Japan, very, very successful internationally, but originates in Japan and was a club owner. These two cats are in Poland. I'm wondering, over all the years that you've done this, what have been some really interesting vignettes of people from around the globe that you would have never expected would have ever contacted Kansas City or had anything to do with Charlie Parker that's been interesting that you've either sniffed or been a part of over these years?
It's interesting because Kansas City, while we celebrate Charlie Parker, and of course we're jazz and barbecue town, I think doesn't really have a very good component of jazz built into our city. I mean, the jazz clubs, I think, are thriving, things are happening, but it is truly the people outside of Kansas City that really take an appreciation more for musicians like Charlie Parker. I mean, Charlie Parker's probably better known outside of Kansas City almost than inside Kansas City, and that's one of the things that Spotlight Charlie Parker tries to do is shine the light, shine the spotlight on the various venues, musicians, things like that are focused on Charlie Parker, and we really have a legend that we can be proud of. There are publications, you mentioned multiple spots overseas, Jazz Tokyo. Yoko Takamura, I believe is her name, has been here several times to cover the Charlie Parker events in August for Jazz Tokyo. She just recently updated Chuck Haddock's book. I mentioned him, and it is now in Japanese language form. It's just amazing the amount of attention that Kansas City gets, and I think if we can capture that energy and we can truly educate ourselves on the importance of what Charlie Parker meant to jazz in the world, it's a huge step that we can take going forward, not only from an enjoyable standpoint, I want to get out and enjoy some music, but also from a city standpoint, right? We've got a new airport that we get the ability, hopefully, to show some jazz art, hopefully have some performing jazz happening there as people land in Kansas City, and really elevate jazz.
Absolutely. Last kind of statement question. I want to know from you, for anybody out there that is thinking about getting out into the world as the music wakes up and the world wakes up, and why should they go see one of these events, which is pretty action-packed, pretty full, post-pandemic, so to speak. Why should folks get out and celebrate this icon of music?
We've lined up a bunch of, I don't know if I want to say COVID-safe events. I mean, we've certainly thought about, safe protocols and where do we go in this world that we're moving, dodging and weaving through this COVID thing. But there are just amazing events. Again, thinking on days that you want to put on your calendar. Saturday, August 21st is a big one. You mentioned also August 29th and American Jazz Museum doing a bunch of events. So Saturday, August 21st, 29th are two really good days. Our calendar at spotlightcharlieparker.org has a lot of these events on there, but the whole afternoon and evening of August 21st is going to be great. There's a bird boot camp is taking place that day, and then it's going to be followed by a musical salute to Charlie Parker. The salute will take place around 2:30, 3 o'clock, and it'll be down at the Folly Theater. So after a full day of performing and learning Charlie Parker's tunes, students and faculty that took part in the bird boot camp will head outside of the Folly Theater, assuming the weather's nice, and do a salute to Charlie Parker. If you get down there and they're not out on the street, they're going to be inside because it'll be either rainy or 120 degrees. Ronnie McFadden's going to be there. He's going to lead classic tunes. We'll hear things, now's the time, I'm sure. Chris Burnett has pulled a lot of this stuff together. Burnett Music Foundation, he's just amazing to work with. The faculty at the boot camp is amazing. Clarence Smith, Todd Wilkinson, Gerald Spates, Will Matthews. I mean, it's kind of a faculty of like the best that you could possibly get. After the musical salute at 12th and Central over there by the Folly, we'll head around the corner for a jam session down at Majestic. Majestic said, hey, we'll open up early. So we're going to be partnering with the Kansas City Jazz Ambassadors, and Majestic will open their doors. We'll get, I think it's Mike Pagan and BJ Jansen that are going to lead a jam session. So we got our keys and we got our horn. Musicians are welcome to come down, join in. We probably will end up with some of the faculty from the boot camp. We'll end up with some of the kids from the boot camp. Enjoy, obviously that jam session, appetizers, cocktails, just celebrate Charlie Parker.
Wonderful. The whole thing, again, sounds like a wonderful celebration, not only of Charlie Parker, but of this town that we live in and love, Kansas City. So, John, thanks for opening up. Good luck with it. I look forward to seeing the various components as it unfolds.
Sounds great. We look forward to seeing you out on the streets and at the jazz clubs.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players and minds in Kansas City and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to John for his time, cool, and stories. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino in the iTunes Store. Visit neonjazz at youtube.com, and for everything Neon Jazz all the time, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.